I'm your host, Micah Versman, and this is Season 5 of the Producer Podcast. This season looks to be a little different from previous seasons, as we'll be sitting down with crew from many of the different film departments to talk about what the producer should know about their area of expertise. To kick things off, we're sitting down with director Brett Varvel to discuss the ever-important director-producer relationship. So without further ado, let's get started. Thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
So maybe just to kind of kick things off, you want to give people a little bit of your background and how you got started in the industry.
So for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker. And my earliest memory is 5 years old. I had finished watching a family-approved version of the movie Back to the Future. And there was just something so captivating about that film, moving pictures and sounds, that how they wove together to incite emotional reactions in me. I just knew that there was something about this movie that I was watching that I thought I must do this when I get older. And that was really kind of the beginning for me. I was self-taught for all my childhood years and then going into my teenage years. And wasn't until I got to college that I actually received any kind of formal training for the craft of film. And the Lord has had me on a very interesting journey where I slowly was discovering the talents and abilities that He had given me, both in front and behind the camera. But it's just been this like step-by-step process of discovering how to use those talents, not for myself or for my glory, but to proclaim His name to a lost and dying world through the art form itself. And so, yeah, I mean, I graduated from Ball State in 2008 and with a degree in film and video production. And from there, I've been heavily involved in the faith-based feature film industry. And then I do the gamut in between the feature film projects, everything from promotional films, music videos to commercials and all kinds of fun stuff in between. So I'm blessed in that I get to do what I've always wanted to do. That 5-year-old boy is living out his dream. But the thing that makes it so much more rewarding for me is that I know that what I'm doing is I'm drawing people to the creator of the universe through the films that I'm a part of it. And there's nothing more thrilling than that, because there's nothing special about me. I don't have any kind of secret recipe of changing anyone's life. I'm simply just showing people what their need is and how they can find life and how they can find fulfillment and hope and eternal life. And so yeah, it's just a really cool thing that I count myself very blessed to be able to do what I do.
Nice. So I know you've directed projects that came out of your own company and were kind of your idea, as well as projects for other people's companies. So how does maybe directing for you differ between those two realms of things?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started attending college, I didn't really fully understand what a director did. I knew I wanted to make movies, and as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, that looked like just me doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
In my ignorance, that was the best training that I ever could have fathomed of how to become a director, because I literally was doing everything. I was doing the producing, I was lighting, I was shooting, I was directing, I was editing, and everything through post-production and so wearing all of those hats. I mean, there were even times on set I was doing catering and whatnot. And so wearing all of those hats and understanding the process that everyone has to go through on a film set um, was the best training that I could have ever wished and hoped for in how to become a director. And because when I look at the role of a director, this is someone who must lead by serving. They must protect the story at all costs, but at the same time be guiding their cast and their crew to buy into this vision that they have. And that's not done through dictatorship or tyranny or just bossing people around. It's done through believing in people and serving their needs rather than your own. And that took me a lot of time to just truly understand. I mean, when I was in college, while most people would be out partying on the weekends, I was making short films and music videos and different things. And just making all kinds of crazy mistakes. And I had no clue what I was doing, but I'm so thankful for those moments because I learned through a lot of failure kind of what my voice is, I guess, as a director. And I shouldn't say that I've arrived by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still kind of discovering bits and parts of how God has wired my brain to work and what I like and what I don't like. And it's changed a lot as I've gotten older and been married and have kids and gone through just the normal trials of life. And so, but tapping into that voice or that bent that I like artistically or whatever has really helped me navigate the types of stuff that I think I'm a good fit to direct or not fit to direct. I mean, things that organically come from me. Yeah, I think I'm the best suited person for those projects just because it's from my heart and my soul. But then really honestly, since the last feature film that I directed that was all mine, so to speak. I mean, my dad was a co-writer on the project, and he and I wrote the script together, and it was very much our baby, so to speak. But all the directorial passions behind it was all me, and it was a fascinating experience to take on a project of that size as a 25-year-old, yeah, and try to lead a team mainly of volunteers. And I learned a lot on that project. But anyway, so then fast forward a few years, and I'm finding myself directing other people's projects, short form projects, longer projects. I was attached to a huge sci-fi film for several years that unfortunately never got the funding, and was able, but the cool thing for me was it gave me a crash course into taking someone else's script, someone else's vision that they had worked on for 20 years, and then try to put my own heart and vision into it. And so that was honestly like the first big thing that I had ever done outside of myself for someone else. And that project in and of itself, even though we never got to shoot it, taught me so much about how to interpret someone's vision, but then make it your own. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned is a director has to set the tone. They have to be the person who, as we like to say in our industry, they are the auteur of the film. They're the one who sets forth the vision. They're the one who is captain of the ship, so to speak. But I've learned this through some failures, that if I don't own up to that, and if I don't truly cast that vision in a project where I'm being brought on as a hired gun, the cast and the crew will go look for that direction from someone else if you're not supplying it.
Okay.
And then the chain of command is confused, and um, there's just this people kind of meander and do their own things, and all kinds of chaos can ensue from those types of moments. Um, and I've also had projects where I'm working with uh, sometimes like an artist or a producer or a writer who they're the ones who came up with the idea, and they're passing off the idea to me to direct it, but they've never really truly let go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this constant, I've been in projects where there's this constant power struggle where there was never a true defining line in the sand of like, okay, the project is now yours, Brett, go ahead and take it. Um, so it's just this like tug of war throughout the process. And so I mean, I'm thankful that I've had these opportunities to go through that, because as I continue to get opportunities to get hired by a company or an artist or whoever to take someone's vision and then make it my own, I now know what not to do. And I know the conversations that I need to have, and it's just so much easier when you don't have to have those conversations when it's your own project.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it really forces me to fight for a vision and truly own up to it and define it. And that's just been a really cool experience, a learning experience for me, and something I continue to learn on and grow in. So yeah, I don't know if that answered any of your question.
No, that's okay. There are definitely you definitely touched on what I was going for. I do want to jump back to something you mentioned in there about how about you figuring out the projects that are going to be a good fit for you. So, and obviously that's something that's going to vary by director, but like for you, what are things you're considering when deciding if you're going to take on a project as a director, and like what information can a producer be providing to help you make that decision?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The interesting thing for a lot of independent filmmakers, which is like 99.9% of the population of filmmakers, is that money usually does dictate a lot of it. Like if it's a job, you got to take the job to put food on the table. And so there is like an unfortunate reality that I'm not at a position, nor do I really expect that I'll ever be at a position where I can pass on things because it's not quite my cup of tea, or whatever. I've got 6 mouths to feed at home. And so there is just a humble reality of saying, okay, here's the job that's before me. But then it's this like, it's this honest and open conversation with the client, the producer, the writer, whoever, of saying, okay, here's my skill set. Here's what I would bring to the project. And just being honest with them, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to mimic someone else's style, or I'm not going to try to do something that's not organically me, because then I know, and because I've tried this before. I've tried to do something that was not genuinely something that I'm good at, and the client wasn't happy. And so I think that for me, I go through a process of I try to understand first and foremost, where did the idea come from?
Okay.
So like this happened recently on a music video that I was hired to direct for an artist. Her name is Lacey Sturm. She used to be the lead singer of the rock band Flyleaf, and now she's on a solo track. And she's a believer, and though her music isn't necessarily like overtly like Christian, it has definite like Christian themes underneath. And so they wanted me to write a treatment and all this stuff. And I was listening to the song, and I said, I called her manager and I said, before I ever start writing a treatment, I need to talk to Lacey, and I need to understand who she is and where this idea came from. And so we got on a Zoom call, and we had like a hour and a half meeting where it was just her telling me her story. And that completely shifted how I was going to craft an idea for her, because what I was seeing in my head the first several times that I was listening to the song would not have worked for her, because I was going a completely different direction. It was more what I would just do, and not thinking about the subtle nuances and the artistic symbolism and different things that she was really, wanting to convey. And so after that call, I went away from that and started crafting a vision. But so that I think that would be the first thing, is know where the story originated from. The second thing is, who's the audience that this is intended for. And then the third thing is just, you have to have that honest question with yourself, which is hard sometimes when you're talking about providing for your family or whatever. Am I the right person for this project? Or do I need to ask for help? Even if I'm going to still direct it. Like, that was something, and that last point is something that I've really just tried to grow in, is being willing and humble enough to say, hey, I don't get this part, or I need some more input here because I don't have the answers for you, and it's like, especially that last point, when you're working with a writer, or a producer, again, adopting the idea and then crafting it and making your own. A lot of times that requires a lot of humility, of just being willing to say, I'm confused here, or I don't have a good idea here, and trying to be open for other input. Because, there's that definite temptation when you step onto a project where you want to have like your gunslinger attitude. Like, I got this nailed. I know exactly what I'm doing. Everyone just fall in line here. I've got it, in gold. But more often than not, I've encountered the reality that I don't have all the best ideas, and it's more important for me to just ask and be willing to be wrong, and let the project be as good as it can be, which sometimes requires me to just get out of the way. And with this music video for Lacey that I just was mentioning, like, that was something that became very apparent for us. Was we had a very short timeline to make this thing happen, and I was going to be driving out to Pittsburgh to shoot this music video, and we had like a really tight window, and I'm literally in the car with all my gear headed to Pittsburgh, and she calls me, and she just had a check in her spirit about some of the things in the treatment and the script that I had written. And I my first thought was, I'm literally on the road. Like, this is a little too late to be like shifting course. But I just realized that she was really trying to be sensitive to inspiration and for the Holy Spirit to do something. And so I said, Lacey, look, we've got a plan, we've got a guide, but think of it as a guide. I'm going to allow inspiration to strike. And if you and I see something, let's discuss it and see if it fits the vision. And if it fits, then we'll go for it. And that was all she needed to hear to really just, I don't know, I guess, trust me. And I mean, we got on set, and it was a tumultuous day and a half of shooting. Like, it was like an intense, no holds barred type shoot. But I'm so proud of how it came out. And we really, truly allowed like true inspiration to happen that was going to constantly be feeding the vision. And it's one of my favorite music videos I've ever done. Just with all the symbolism we were able to convey, and more than anything, again, I'm the hired gun there at the end of the day, and seeing her response to the music video was it was what I wanted at the end of the day. I mean, she's truly the producer on the project, and she was so thrilled, and she said it's like seeing my heart on the screen. I was like, oh yes, praise the Lord. But that result of that music video comes on the heels of years of me trying to figure out when the project hasn't originated from my DNA, how do I do this? And so it's not like I hope I don't come across like I've got it all figured out, because I don't, and I'm still figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, no, for sure. So then I kind of want to flip that question the opposite way, and like, you as a director, what advice would you give to a producer of like, when they're looking for a director, of like, these are things you should consider before you start reaching out to people that you think might be a good fit?
Goodness, I've never thought of it from that perspective. What would I want producers to think about? I would want them to consider, first and foremost, are they willing to hire a director? And that might seem like a strange thought, but what I have come into contact with is some people, they may lack the people skills or the technical know-how, or not being able to talk to actors, quite well enough, or whatever excuse that might be staring in front of them. But at the end of the day, some of the most intense tug of wars I've had on a film set have been because the producers don't want to let go of control, and they don't want to let go of the vision, and they want their ideas. And in those cases, I would lovingly tell those people, like, you need to direct next time. You're not willing to let it go because you have such strong ideas, and you have it such a specific way in your head that the nuts and bolts of prepping and planning for a shoot don't matter anymore, because you're thinking so creatively. And so that would be one thing, is for them to consider whether or not they actually even are willing to hire a director. But then if they are, I think it's important for a producer to ask a director how they would approach a scene, how they would approach casting, how they would approach hiring a DP, or whatever, because you'll learn a lot in those types of conversations if they're interviewing a director, and you'll learn the person's style, you'll learn the person, like what types of people they typically like to work with. Since I'm involved in the Christian film industry, some producers are very open to having non-believers on the film set. Some producers are not. So if you're working with a director who is exclusive, like, I don't want to work with non-believers, well, that should be something to consider, when you're hiring a director, and vice versa, the whole gamut. But I would also encourage producers to consider not just the talent of the director, but consider the heart of the director. With me also being an actor, I've been on film sets where the director, without naming names, completely ruins the vibe on the set because they don't know how to lead. They don't know how to inspire people, and they can just easily come across as a jerk, and it just makes everybody unhappy. And I mean,
Yes,
it's film sets are already tense enough as it is. I mean, you've got the schedule, the budget breathing down your neck, and um, I'm amazed at how at the phrase anything that can go wrong will go wrong on a film set, and it's so true, and especially like in the pre-production phase. But having interviewing people and trying to see how if they would be able to keep their cool in those situations. If things go south, is their attitude going to make the wardrobe department freak out, and or whatever the case would be. And so yeah, I think it's easy to get fixated on the talent and to say, oh, that person knows what they're doing. I love the stuff that they create. I love their visual eye or whatever. But in some ways, the character of a director is in many ways sometimes more important than the talent. And so I would greatly encourage producers to think about those things, and because I think it'll really help them hone in on who they're looking for. And the other reality is they may not know who they're looking for yet. So it gives them kind of some substance to ask themselves, like, what am I truly looking for? And hopefully that'll make their process easier. And it'll make the relationship with that inevitable director so much more harmonious and lovely to be around.
Yes, that is true. So you mentioned how, with film, pretty much anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So like, what have you kind of learned in terms of like working with a producer when whether it's a location, dropping, an actor gets sick or whatever, how have you learned to work with the producer to overcome those obstacles?
So, yeah, that's a great question. I've seen a lot of different things happen. Um, Everything from people's schedules going astray, locations dropping out, people wanting to quit, and gear breaking, or whatever it is. I've seen it all, and it's all happened to me. At the end of the day, I've really started to press into more and more, that a producer and a director's attitude, regardless of how they're actually feeling, will make or break the film set. And that comes from a place where they have to be united, one, but two, they also have to be willing to let go of what they want. And I'll give you a for instance. So my first feature film that I directed was called The War Within. And it was a very stressful production because we were trying to be smart with our budget. We only had a certain amount of money we could spend. And so because we were producing this through my church, we had a lot of volunteers that we trained. And so when I did have people on set, those were like precious hours, because a lot of them were not being paid. They were just being there. They were there out of the goodness of their heart. And we're halfway through production. The one of the hardest parts of production had been done. All of our set work had been done, and then we were all on our location work. But the location work was in some ways more stressful, just because we were doing a lot of company moves, and we couldn't just, lock up the doors and go home, because we were inhabiting people's homes and different things. And I was feeling it pretty heavily at that point, just the stress of it. And we're shooting the scene, and the sensor on our camera, our brand new, my company purchased one of the first Red One cameras. And so my company owns it, and the sensor breaks right in the middle of our shoot. We don't have a backup camera. The only other camera that was on set that day was a DSLR, which would not have matched in any way, shape, or form the visuals that we had been creating. And my heart just sank, and I think I remember like crumbling down to the floor in front of the camera and just staring at it in disbelief, that this was happening. And I tried to put on a good face, but I was just so discouraged.
Mm.
And one of my volunteers, she was our prop master, and she just stepped in. She goes, "Folks, we need to pray." And I was like, oh, that should have been me saying that. Oh man, way to lead, Brett. Way to go. And so we prayed. We canceled the shoot that night, and then I had a meeting with my executive producer the next day, and my dad, who was also one of our producers. And I was just like gun ho. Let's call Red Digital Cinema. Let's have them ship out a replacement. I don't care what it costs. We need to stay on schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget my executive producer. He said, "Brett, I think that this is something that we need to be patient about, because maybe the Lord is doing something in your heart and with this project, and you need to pause and reflect on what that is." And I fought him on it a little bit. I was just like, "No, you don't understand. This is gonna wreck our schedule." And because I was expecting a lot of damage to our budget. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the repair costs, and because we had shipped out the camera overnight to Red, and they got back with us with a really early report that the sensor had gone some kind of oil or something had gotten into the sensor and completely ruined it. And the really frustrating thing to me was our camera was like a month past warranty.
Oof.
And so I'm sitting there thinking, this is ridiculous. I mean, this isn't my fault, and all this stuff. And so they weren't going to cover it. And it was going to be $8,000 just to clean the sensor and get it repaired enough to function, let alone, I had no idea if it was going to, be working like it used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm praying with my producer team, and we just, we just had this moment of surrender where we were trusting that God was going to provide the camera, the system to get the rest of the film shot, and that we needed to let go and cancel our shoot days until we had a camera. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not how you do things. And I sent an email to Red, and just to appeal to their heart and see what they could do, if anything. Mm-hmm. And the Lord's favor was in it, because they not only sent out a replacement camera for us to continue production, but because they realized that the sensor was slightly defective, and even though it was past warranty, they fixed the sensor free of charge and sent my camera back, and we were able to finish production with the same camera system and everything. And it was just one of those moments where I thought the world was coming to an end, and I thought that this was going to ruin the production. But it was a moment where I saw God work in a way that I couldn't have. Mm-hmm. And so that moment has always stuck in my mind, and to a point now when I'm encountering anything going wrong on pre-production or during production or even post, I think back on that and I think, well, the Lord has something else for me to see here. Maybe he needs to work on my heart. Maybe he has something to reveal to us, just so we can step back and worship him. Or maybe there's something better that we hadn't even been thinking of, or whatever. I've seen those types of things happen before. And so, and many times, and I saw this happen on a film set I was on where I was a director, where sometimes it's just simply about the people's hearts on your film set. Sometimes it's literally just about discipleship, and God uses these circumstances to draw out our hearts. And then as a director and producer, like, you have the opportunity as leaders of the project to come together rather than go apart, and to inspire people to press into the Lord, even if they don't believe in God. That's been one of the cool things for me is, even with having unbelievers on the set, trying to keep my cool and partner with the producer. And at the end of the day, as a director, being submissive to what the producer's call is going to be. Because usually when things go wrong, logistically, it's the producer's job to fix it. And I may not like what they choose, but that's not my job. And I can give input, but at the end of the day, like, I need to be submissive to the fact that they may have a better idea. And so I think, yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying that there has to be a certain amount of harmony between a director and a producer when navigating the chaos that ensues on a film set. And they have to, just come to this realization that their dependency has to be on God and not on their wit or their talent to get through those moments. Because when it's on us, we're gonna fail or be miserable. But when it's on God, it's like the pressure is off and you just then fall into what he has for you. And a lot of times it grows your creativity because you have to adapt to things that you weren't prepared for. And that's always a really fun, stretching experience to be in.
So you mentioned there how sometimes you as the director might not always like agree with a decision the producer makes. And I feel like that is, you get on some sets and it very much, there's that mindset of like the director's here, trying to do this vision, and the producer's just there saying, no, we can't do that. We can't do this, because all he's concerned about is the money. So what tips maybe do you have for producers and directors to have good communication, so that they can kind of avoid creating that feel on set?
Yeah. I think it goes back to that word harmony, but I think to expand on that, there has to be a really clear level of expectations before you even start the project. Like, I'll give you for instance, I directed Treasure Lies, which was produced and written by Scott Peterson. And that was a project. It's a super low budget movie. And I had signed on knowing what the budget was. And I knew that the budget wasn't going to change. And so my expectations were aligned with his in that we have to make this movie for this amount of dollars. And this isn't a moment where I get to put on my fedora and want to be artsy and say, I'm sorry, Scott, you need me to give me this, this, and this because I'm the director. Like, I agreed to something. And people may not like the salary they got, or they may not like the food that we ate, or whatever the case is, but there was a clear set level of expectations from the get-go. And I think a lot of times there's a problem with a director and producer relationship because they don't come to a clear understanding of what the parameters are. And so then when there's a tug of war over a, logistical matter or a creative matter, from a budgetary perspective, there's not going to be a harmonious decision because there wasn't that, expectation set from the beginning. And because I think one of the other things that I've really, Treasure Lies was actually a really good learning experience for me, in that what we were trying to achieve was way beyond our budget. but we never let budget stand in the way. It was
Okay.
a stretching experience where Scott and I were willing to say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, and we can't afford that. So creatively, how can we do this? What can I as the director give up? What can Scott give up as the producer? What can the DP do that's different from the way he normally works? You know, we would have these conversations with our department heads, and it was a tough shoot. I mean, like trying to make a movie with as cheap as we did it was challenging, but at the same time, like I don't know, I just feel like so often people see barriers or budgetary parameters or location parameters or whatever um, as bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the older I get and the more I do this, the more I'm trying to press into them as, okay, those are just the creative boundaries. That's the edge of the paper. What can we still do inside the paper? And I think part of that stems from growing up in the house that I did. My dad is a internationally known political cartoonist, and for the for all of my life and even to this day, he had a deadline every day. He had to spit out a cartoon every single day, and he didn't get to say to his boss, "Well, I'm just not feeling it today. You know, sorry, you're gonna have to run a cartoon I did a few years ago." He he was he had a deadline, and he always told me, Brett, deadlines force creativity. They force creativity. It just has to happen at that point. So, I mean, honestly, producers can do a can what I if I were to speak to a producer and I would just say, hey, here's some advice on when those moments happen, whether it's budget, location, scheduling, whatever the case is, and it's a problem. Approach your director not with hostility or with this arrogance of here's the situation, you got to deal with it now,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
approach them with an open heart and an open mind, saying here's the problem, here's how I think we should solve it, and giving that director opportunity to speak into it instead of just making decisions. And then on the director's side, don't when a producer comes to you with a problem or with something that they have to change or whatever the case is, don't get discouraged and think that they're against you, because they're navigating problems that you don't fathom. You're in the sandbox making fun movie magic. They're trying to make sure that there's sand in the sandbox so that you can make movie magic. And so I think a lot of times when there's hostility between a director and a producer, it's because they see each other as enemies or something. And
Mm-hmm.
it should be one of the most harmonious relationships on a film set. They should be a team. And I've been a part of it when it's felt like a team, and then I've been a part of it sometimes when it's not felt like a team. And I've been trying to learn and grow from that as an artist, and trying not to repeat those mistakes. And at the end of the day, too, I think there's a biblical reality of having an opportunity to go to a director or a producer, whoever you are, and saying, I was wrong. I've sinned against you. My attitude towards you was not right. Will you forgive me of that? And try to just move on, instead of just harboring bitterness or whatever the case might be.
No, that was really well said. And the expectations is definitely an important part, regardless of whether it's the director or even other crew on the project. So I have a few final wrap-up questions for you. So the first one is, what or how can a producer be most helpful to the director during that production phase? Should the producer just kind of stay out of the director's hair unless there's something that needs to be discussed, or are there things the producer can do to help make the director's job easier?
That's a good question. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of moments that I've had on set. There's something instinctual that happens to a director on set when the producer is there and the producer is hovering. Please don't hover. Like, because the first thought that goes into a director's mind a lot of times, at least in my mind, is, okay, what's wrong? You know,
Yeah.
not that a producer's presence on a film set is always bad. I'm not saying that. But let's be honest, more often than not, when they're there for an extended period of time, it's because there's a discussion that needs to happen because something's not, working or whatever. So I would just encourage producers to be mindful of your demeanor and your cadence on set. I've seen producers walk around film sets and they just look grumpy. They just have this grumpy look on their face because I get it. What they do is intense, and there's constant stuff that's ebbs and flows, but you'd be surprised how far a smile can go, and and calmness. I can't stress enough calmness because because there's a few things that a director is constantly navigating on a day-to-day film set. There's the relationship with the first AD, which is a whole nother topic, and that relationship can make or break a film set as well. And so they're trying to navigate the schedule for that shoot day. They're trying to navigate the creativity with the camera and electrical department. They're trying to navigate the emotion with the actors. They're navigating the pitfalls that happen when extras are on set and all kinds of different things. And so their mind is just racing just as much as a producer, obviously in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so calmness can really speak volumes when things do need to be discussed, or just when you want to be on set. I think that's something too that is unfortunate for a lot of producers, is sometimes their work gets so intense that they don't get to spend much time on set. And that's, discouraging. And so I get that. And I don't know. So I think just that having, if there is clear expectations already set, and there's an honest, open communication that's happening, and it's not contentious, all of those things, and then that's followed up by calmness, and a positive demeanor despite the circumstances. I think that can speak volumes to a director when he's navigating something with a producer on set. But at the end of the day, directors also need to be not be divas. They need to just not be full of themselves, and they need to see they need to be able to see beyond the art sometimes. I think that's something that I've really tried to grow in, is I can get so fixated on, I'm making my movie, and you're not paying attention to the flaming bus that's coming towards your film set, or whatever. And you have to be aware that making a movie is many problems solved. And so the producer, by and large, is trying to solve those problems for you. So trust them, and I could talk about that for hours, but anyway.
Yeah, sounds good. So then my final question, and this could be in regards to the director-producer position, this could be kind of just whatever comes to mind. But what's one piece of advice you would give to a producer about running a good film set?
Running a good film set. Um, it's interesting that it's a very interesting way to phrase it, because it's such a subjective thing for a lot of people. I've been a part of micro budgets, small budgets, big budgets. It's hard as far as production is concerned. And sometimes I am the producer. Sometimes I've worked for a producer. Sometimes I'm the actor on set. So I've had a fair bit of perspective on that term, running a good set. And I think what it really boils down to is how well you treat people. I did a project last year that's still in post-production that I'm not contractually at liberty to discuss what it is, but it was one of my favorite film sets that I've ever been a part of. And by and large, that is because the producer cared deeply about us. And when I say us, I mean the cast and the crew, as human beings and not as employees. Like the fundamental simplicity of that is so important, that yes, this is a job, you're an employee, and you're hired for this many days and all these different types of things, and a producer can navigate it like that. They're totally their prerogative to just treat it like a business, which you need to, don't get me wrong, you do need to treat it like a business, but at the end of the day, like checking up on people as a producer and asking them, how are you doing? How's your living accommodations? How's the food? Emotionally, how are you doing? What is it that you need that you don't have right now? Those types of questions, you'd be shocked how people's demeanor on set would change if the director or the producer, and I would honestly use, I would all these things I'm suggesting, I think it should be both, and the director and producer must be functioning this way on set. And it, because I just to expound on that, like the producer is in charge of their living accommodations, their salary, their food, their just their literal comfort on set. The director then is responsible for inspiring the most out of their talent and leading them in their talent. And so if you're not caring about the person and you're only caring about the end product, that person is going to have a miserable time on set. I can guarantee you. But this project that I mentioned, like it was a tough shoot. There was a lot that we had to accomplish in a relatively short amount of time. It was a 5-week shoot that should have taken like 8 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And so we were packing a lot of pages in every day, but everybody constantly had a smile on their face. And I've never been a part of a project that was so warm and welcoming and exciting. I don't know how else to describe it. Like everyone, down to the volunteer PA, they just had a great time on the film set. But I think it's because, to sum it up, every single person on that film set felt valued. And they didn't just feel like an object being used to create something. And that's honestly, like, it goes back to what I was talking about at the very beginning of what I believe the role of a director is: to be a servant leader, It's the epitome of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. It is, even though everyone's working for the director and the producer, being willing to get down in the dirt and see things from their perspective and see their humanity and care about them as a person, is so, so important. And I think it's something that brings God much glory in what we do. Because I work in Christian film a lot, it can be easy to get fixated on the final product that is spreading a message to people. And it's easy to then neglect the ministry that happens on a film set, which in many ways I'm starting to understand is just as important, if not more important sometimes, than the final product of the movie. Because Jesus cares deeply about the one-on-one evangelism and discipleship of the gospel. And it's why he said, one of his final things he said to his disciples in the upper room was, "A new command I give you, love one another." You know, this command wasn't show people what to do. It was love one another. And Jesus demonstrated what that looks like. And I think that if directors and producers would press into that reality and adopt that into the way that they lead a cast and crew, they'll have some of the most happy and memorable film sets of their life.
Nice. That's something I definitely would look forward to being a part of. All right. So we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of the show, but thank you very much for coming on and talking about the whole director-producer relationship.
My pleasure, Micah. Thank you.
Until next time, make sure to subscribe to the Producer Podcast, and thanks for listening.